You're probably aware of the book I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, or maybe you're not, but anyway, it's a famous book written by Isaac Asimov about robots. In fact, there was a movie as well, 2004 I think it was. Anyway, it was a fairly clever book, and the robots operated according to 3 laws. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they basically went something like a robot will not harm a human being, or through negligence allow a human being to come to harm, and blah blah blah. And these laws were embedded into the robots. Human robots don't have those laws. Put a gun into the hand of somebody and tell them there's a war on, and they'll go and shoot people. That's the kind of stuff that goes on in the human realm. Robots seem somewhat more civilized, at least Asimov's robots. Anyway, are you a robot? You probably object to that, and by the end of this you may think, oh yeah, well maybe I'm a little bit more like a robot than I thought I was. And maybe you won't. It's your freedom. So, the nature of a robot, and really a robot is a particular instance of something which is a cybernetic system. So at the heart of cybernetics is this idea that a particular system, be it a business or an animal or a government, whatever, a particular system operates towards a goal. And not only does it operate towards a goal, but it also has to have the means of knowing whether it is moving towards that goal or away from it. So it has to have some sensors, if you like, or some means of measurement. And finally, so there are 3 bits: the goal, the means to measure whether you are moving towards the goal, and finally the means to correct the actions of the system to move towards the goal if it's moved away, and to try and optimize its position overall. So let's go through an example, a human example. So let's say you go to work and your boss tells you you're fired. Well, human beings have as their goal survival, as do all sentient creatures. And I get messages from people and I see comments saying, life's a pile of shit, and so on and so forth. Well, all that whining, and the previous podcast to this was called The Baby Brain, all the whining is something wholly separate. The fact that all these people that are complaining still had their breakfast, or have eaten in the last 2 or 3 days, I would assume, have been to the toilet, have sought shelter of some kind or other, whatever it is that's required to keep the organism going. The fact that they've done all that means that really they're not tired of life. Their little crying baby in their head might be a bit pissed off. And it's the job of the conscious mind to try and educate the baby to some extent, but that's another podcast. The previous one to this, in actual fact. Anyway, I've wandered away a little bit, so just to recap, any cybernetic system needs 3 things. It needs a goal, it needs a means of measuring whether it's near the goal or moving away from it, and it needs a means to correct its actions if it has moved away, or even actions to take it nearer to the goal. So I gave the example of someone losing their job. And the goal for human beings is to survive. That is your goal. You might not like that. You might think your goal is to be a great musician, or whatever. But actually no, your goal is to survive. If through being a great musician or a great scientist or a great business person, or whatever kind of vanity you have, allows you to survive more adequately, then you will do it. There are exceptions to that, but generally speaking, that's the rule. So our goal is to survive. So when you're told that you've lost your job, that's a bit of a threat to your survival. you'll probably feel very deflated initially. Maybe you'll feel angry, resentful, all those kind of things. And how do you actually react? Well, these are emotions. So your emotions are your means of measuring your survival fitness. If something happens that promotes your survival fitness, then you will be happy. If something happens that diminishes your survival prospects, then you will definitely be unhappy. That's all unhappiness is. So when someone is whining and complaining, then what they're really doing is really just trying to voice the fact that their survival prospects in some way have been diminished. That's what they're doing. It's not a very intelligent way of going about it, because really you should go down to, well, how do I feel diminished? What's kind of gone on to make me feel like that? But that can be long and difficult work. So you walk into work, you're told you're fired. This goes against your goal, which is to survive. Your emotions are your barometer to tell you how well you're surviving or how well you're not surviving. And then finally, you have intelligence to correct your situation as far as you can anyway. So intelligence, would say, oh shit, I've got to apply for 20 other jobs. Yeah, I'll do a bit of lying on the job applications. And when you go for the interviews, then you'll wear your best suit and you'll try and impress the people as best you can. So this is a corrective action taken through your intelligence. When you've lost your job, you just don't go home and lay on the couch and eat donuts and drink beer all day. I mean, you might do for a day or two, but typically you go home and you're straight into the newspaper. Where's the jobs? And getting the applications out. So this behavior, to have a goal, to have a means of assessing how well you're performing against the goal, and to have the means to correct any deviations away from the goal, that is the behavior of a robot, of a cybernetic organism. And a fairly bright chap called Norbert Wiener, in the last century, I think he died in 1964, wrote a brilliant book on cybernetics, and he was talking about the behavior of sentient life and machines. And it's pretty much the same. There's a goal, there's a means of assessing where you are against the goal, and there's a means of correcting actions to make sure that you achieve the goal as far as you can. Of course, ultimately it's futile because you die. But that's just something you tell yourself in your head. Your body will keep going as long as it can, because over millions of years of evolution, your body has been fine-tuned to survive. That's why we are the most dominant and successful species on this planet, because we are very, very sensitive to changes in our status as far as our goal is concerned, namely survival. In fact, we're oversensitive to it. We are anxious. Our brains amplify our lack or our situations that need addressing, and it creates anxiety, and we're driven by that anxiety. But anyway, that's another podcast as well. So we have the goal, we have the means of measuring how we're doing, and finally we have the means of correcting the situation. This is how all cybernetic organisms work. It's how all robotic devices work. They have a goal, and they're constantly measuring how they are performing against that goal. So, to go back to the original question, are you a robot? Then yes, you are a robot. Your goal is to survive. Your measuring device is your emotions. Your corrective capabilities come from your intelligence. Hence, you robot.